For as long as Toronto has existed, Toronto Island has been a summer destination for residents and visitors. But Toronto Island is more than a summertime day trip. During the shoulder seasons, it's a serene and tranquil escape from the unrelenting hum of the city. And I'm going to show you why you need to visit before the mob of visitors arrive in the summer. Residents and visitors to Toronto Island have been making this journey across the harbor for nearly 200 years. The very first ferries in operation were paddle boats, powered by horses on treadmills. Next came steam power, then diesel. And in 2026, a new fleet of electric-powered ferries are set to take over. During the winter months, only the Wards Island ferry runs back and forth. It's a barge-style ferry, not dissimilar from those early horse-powered paddle ferries. While it may be referred to as Toronto Island, it's actually an archipelago of about 15 islands. The chain of islands stretches about 5 kilometers across Toronto's waterfront. Here on the eastern side of the island is Wards Island. Starting in the 1800s, fishermen would camp on the island. In the early 1900s, entire families would camp here, and it was known as Tent City, a term with a very different meaning today. You won't find any tent cities here today, by any definition. In the 1930s, the city allowed permanent cottages to be built, and over the years that evolved into year-round homes. But don't start planning your move to the island. The homes here can't be sold on the open market, and the residents don't own the land. It's a complicated process. One of the most charming aspects of island life is that cars are not allowed on the island, with the exception of city services and delivery vehicles. The island residents have to do most of their day-to-day errands on the mainland. The island does have regular city services like garbage pickup, mail delivery, and a fire station. Toronto Island was technically a peninsula until a spring storm in 1858 eroded the narrow land bridge connecting it to the Portlands. Today, the naturally formed waterway is called the Eastern Channel. At the south end of Wards Island is Wards Island Beach. During the summer, this beach is said to be one of the quietest on Toronto Island, but during the off-season, it's deserted. Except for me and this guy. It's also the most protected as it's tucked in behind the peninsula of Tommy Thompson Park. From Wards Island, you can take the scenic boardwalk to Center Island, 2 kilometers to the west. The boardwalk used to be called Lakeshore Avenue, and it stretched from Wards Island all the way to the far west side of Hanlon's Point. Lakeshore was lined with homes until the 1950s and 60s when they were demolished to create Toronto Island Park. You can still see some of the foundations and break walls from those homes. About halfway between Wards Island and Center Island is Sunfish Cut, with great views back towards the city skyline. A little further west, there's a footbridge connecting to Snake Island, where you can get even closer and unobstructed views of the city. Continuing west, and you reach St. Andrew by the Lake Church, which was built in 1884. It cost $2,000 to build back then, and some of the funding came from prominent Toronto families like the Masseys and Gooderhams, who were summer residents of the island.
The Toronto Islands, a walk-on-the-grass kind of place just off the city's waterfront.
We now reach Center Island, which during the summer is the hub of activity and tourism on the island. This time of year, it feels like an abandoned theme park, which it kind of is. In the summer, the fountains are flowing, the gardens are vibrant colors, an avenue of the island is full of visitors. To the north and over the bridge is Centerville Amusement Park. Besides the parkland and beaches, Centerville is one of the major draws. Amusement parks have been a staple of Toronto Island since the 1880s, when Hanlon's Point Amusement Park operated where Billy Bishop Airport is today. In its heyday, Hanlon's Point Amusement Park had roller coasters, a miniature train, a midway, vaudeville shows, a shooting gallery, and a 40-foot platform from which horses would high dive into Lake Ontario. Roberts, the author of the 1892 Canadian Guidebook, states, "The island is to Toronto what Coney Island and Manhattan Beach are to New York." And looking at the old photos of Hanlon's Point Amusement Park, I get the comparison, but I don't think it fits anymore. In the 1920s, attendance declined at Hanlon's Point when Sunnyside Amusement Park opened on the mainland a short distance away. The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, yes, the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, played at Hanlon's Point Stadium right next to the amusement park, but they moved to a new stadium, which further impacted attendance at Hanlon's Point. Eventually, Hanlon's Point closed in the 1930s. Centerville would open about 30 years later, as part of a master plan to convert Toronto Island from residential to recreational. Follow Avenue of the Island back over the bridge and all the way to the lake. It's hard to believe, but this area used to be a small town with grocery stores, hotels, barber shops, and a bowling alley. At the shoreline is Center Island Beach. In the summer, this area is crowded with visitors. Today, it reminds me of the handful of beach communities around southern Ontario that are all boarded up, just like this place. In a matter of weeks, they'll start to transform back into summer destinations. But it's so much more peaceful this time of year. There's change rooms, food, and bike rentals here. Center Island Pier provides a great view of the water and waves as they roll in. And looking back at the shoreline reminds me again of this old Canadian guidebook. The author goes on to say, when talking about the island, it is really nothing more than a great sandbank, formed by the drift and offscoring from Scarborough Heights, and its shape is continually changing. But the city is doing its best to slow that change. Continuing west, Center Island Beach becomes Gibraltar Point Beach. This wide stretch of beach reaches out into the open water of Lake Ontario. Today, visitors have any number of transportation options to arrive in Toronto and the island. But a couple hundred years ago, the first tourists to the area could arrive to Toronto by rail or steamboat. The book describes how passengers on board the steam ferries could cross the lake from Niagara, and their first sight of Toronto would be Gibraltar Point Beach. It's the most southern tip of the island chain. Just a little ways inland from the beach is Gibraltar Point Lighthouse. It used to be near the water's edge, but as we know, the island's shape is always changing. Originally, there was an outpost of Fort York at this location. Fort York was built directly across the water, making the harbor entrance fortified so as to be impregnable, as stated by John Graves Simcoe, the first lieutenant governor of Upper Canada. The lighthouse was built in 1808 to help boats and ships navigate Gibraltar Point, which has historically been a dangerous area to navigate. There's many shipwrecks in the waters offshore, and many still sank even after the lighthouse was built. It's also said that the lighthouse is haunted by its first lightkeeper, who was murdered here in 1815. Following the shoreline, it curves northward towards Billy Bishop Airport and the Western Channel. This is where you'll find Hanlon's Point Beach. It's a secluded beach away from the rest of the island attractions. Looking out across the water, there are beautiful views of Humber Bay and the residential towers along the shoreline. And you can't see it with the naked eye, but the mouth of the Humber River is just to the right of the buildings, and it's one of the most historically important waterways in Canadian history, but that's for another video. It should be noted for visitors during the summer that Hanlon's Point Beach is a clothing-optional beach. It was a little chilly, so I kept my clothes on this time. Heading back towards Island, we pass the only school, Island Public and Natural Science School. It's an elementary school that goes up to grade 6. Students who attend either live on the island or along Toronto's waterfront area. It would be really fun to take the ferry to school every day. Besides Ward's Island, Algonquin Island is also home to many of the island's residents. Prior to the 1940s, small cottages occupied the land near the shore. Lots were created, and after World War II, returning veterans were able to lease the lots on the interior of Algonquin Island and build small bungalows. Seneca Avenue, which runs along the shoreline, offers amazing views of the city skyline. Ward's Island Ferry is a short walk from Algonquin Island. And if it's cold, step inside the waiting shed. There's some interesting historical displays to keep you occupied while you wait. If you can time it right, it's definitely worth taking the ferry back at sunset or after dark. The lit up skyline of Toronto is a pretty stunning sight from the water. And as Toronto's modern skyline grows ever taller, the views will continue to impress. Visiting a place like Toronto Island isn't just a summer day trip, but an impressive experience with each changing season. And there's pleasant small moments if you go out and look for them, even in the cold. As Charles G.D. Roberts puts it in the Canadian Guidebook, all through her temperate summers, her streets are deliciously shadowed. All through her mild winters, the sunlight streams in freely through her naked branches. I'm Mark, and I make videos about interesting places and experiences. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. See ya.